Good afternoon. For those of you who do not know me, I am Frank Panasuk. I am the president of the 1791 Society and a retired detective from the town of Hamburg Police Department. I have a lifetime of experience in law enforcement and with firearms. During my tenure with the town of Hamburg Police Department, I had the opportunity to work with some of the finest law enforcement professionals in the state of New York. The methodology of these committed public servants had one important factor in common. Each officer was committed to protecting the rights of innocent people. I worked for the town of Hamburg Police Department during the early years of Kathy Hochul's political career. She displayed characteristics inapposite to the qualities of Western New York's law enforcement professionals. She was always and continues to be a political opportunist who does not care about the rights of others. She only cares about herself and what personal gain she can make in any transaction. The 1791 Society is first and foremost an organization dedicated to protecting New Yorkers' Second Amendment rights. But we are also committed to protecting the basic civil rights of all New Yorkers, whether or not it is politically convenient to do so. When basic human, civil, and constitutional rights are not protected equally for everyone, regardless of their race, religion, social, or economic status, this country ceases to be America. Nowhere in history was a more despicable affront to human rights more apparent than in the passage of Jim Crow laws in the late 19th and early 20th century. Jim Crow laws were a set of state-level laws that sought to prop up racial segregation in the United States. These laws relied on two main methods for keeping Black Americans from exercising their right to vote: poll taxes and literacy tests. Poll taxes were fees required for registration for casting a ballot, which had been declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 1877, but continued to be enforced in southern states until the passage of the 24th Amendment in 1964. Jim Crow laws elevated these costs to an extreme degree, with poll taxes reaching heights as high as $2 per person. This made it almost impossible for African Americans living below or near poverty levels to pay and register to vote. In addition, many states employed literacy tests as a way to limit African Americans from registering. These tests often featured questions about the Constitution, American history, and other topics that blacks were not allowed to learn in school due to segregation. African Americans were required to score extremely well, better than white applicants, in order for their registration attempts to be approved, leading many of them to remain ineligible to vote. The combined effect of poll taxes and literacy tests made it far more difficult than necessary for African Americans to exercise their right to vote. This had a devastating impact on the Black community throughout the nation, as they lacked representation or power in public offices. Jim Crow laws remained in place until 1965, when the Voting Rights Act was passed, finally protecting minority citizens' rights. Despite the passage of this landmark legislation, however, the legacy of Jim Crow laws still lingers today. Their legacy has left an indelible mark on American society and continues to shape conversations around racism in the United States. The lasting implications of these laws are tangible reminders that more needs to be done to ensure all citizens have access to their fundamental rights. A fundamental right is a fundamental principle of justice that is recognized as part of the legal framework established by a nation's constitution. These rights are essential to citizens in order for them to enjoy liberty, security, and other civil liberties. Fundamental rights are typically provided within written documents such as constitutions or declarations of rights. They serve as protection against arbitrary abuse of power from a government or any other authority. The concept of fundamental rights has been applied throughout history in various forms, including the Magna Carta in England and the Bill of Rights in the United States. In general, these rights serve to protect individuals from injustice and provide basic human needs such as freedom of speech, freedom from discrimination, freedom from unfair punishment or imprisonment without due process, and the freedom to pursue one's own destiny. These are just a few examples of how fundamental rights can protect individuals in a nation, though the specifics of each individual right may vary from country to country. In addition, some countries have developed international treaties that also serve as protection for their citizens' fundamental rights. For example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is an international treaty that provides all people with certain inherent basic rights, regardless of where they live or what citizenship they hold. Fundamental rights are critical for establishing and maintaining a just society, as they ensure that all individuals are able to participate in society without fear of persecution or discrimination. Thus, it is essential to uphold and defend these fundamental rights whenever possible so that everyone has an equal chance at a prosperous future. Almost all Americans agree on what fundamental rights are. Unfortunately, however, the right to keep and bear arms is not being treated as a fundamental right, despite clear and unequivocal law from the United States Supreme Court and federal, along with state courts across the nation, declaring the Second Amendment right a fundamental right equal to the right of free speech, the right to vote, and the right to practice any religion or no religion at all. Frederick Douglass famously stated, "A man's rights rest in three boxes: the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box." With the unconstitutional and Orwellian named Concealed Carry Improvement Act, New York Governor Kathy Hochul has more than violated the mandates of the United States Constitution. She has spit in the face of poor African Americans, elderly, and the economically disadvantaged by setting a high economic bar calculated at roughly $1,400 minimum for an individual to exercise their Second Amendment right to own a handgun in New York State. In effect, she has applied the spirit of the Jim Crow laws in her crusade against the fundamental Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Governor Hochul's Concealed Carry Improvement Act exacts burdensome costs placed on gun license applications for New Yorkers. This limits the fundamental right of citizens to keep and bear arms, something that is guaranteed to all Americans in the Second Amendment. This act directly restricts access to a basic human right, the right of self-defense, by making it more expensive and difficult for New Yorkers to obtain licenses for their weapons. These added fees and processes make it harder for many people who already struggle with poverty or other economic issues to purchase firearms legally, thus infringing upon their Second Amendment rights. The Concealed Carry Improvement Act is